better watch where you're stepping because you're in brown water. It's a sewer map, so naturally expectations are already going to be fairly low. That being said, the map isn't terrible, just not anything particularly earth-shattering either. There's certainly a darkness that blankets the entirety of the sewer section, which means you can't see too much at once, and one spot seems like a section in Toxic Dump, just kinda worse. The only part of the map that even has anything to do with Washington, D.C. is a small part at the end about the Pentagon. There's not that much to speak of here, even the multi-switch with pipes just seems underwhelming at best. I'm sure they could have found a better way to base a map around the Pentagon than a sewer one. It's time for some underground chaos and metro mayhem. For the most part, the map feels like a retread of Rapid Transit, albeit with a few wrinkles. As I said in my Quake rankings, making a secret exit permanently lockable accidentally is kinda messed up, something this map is guilty of. If you want to beat the Battlelord sentry at the end, say hello to a door that locks behind you. The rest of the map is honestly nothing special, even the train cars, since they were in the original and Quake came out 9 months before this expansion pack. The arcade is nice, but even that is marred by enemies seemingly firing at you through walls via Secret Office. I don't want to seem like I'm entirely condemning the map because it's not the worst thing ever. It's time to pay respect to the great big Freudian shape in Memorial Service. Since I tend to bring this up a lot, I should mention that this map is certainly much more linear than the previous one. While it isn't entirely without deviating paths, much of the indoor sections are very simple and pushing you forward. Mandatory fall damage and distance shooting switches on a timer certainly don't help in making me feel more fond of this map. Admittedly though, the beginning area is nice and spacious and the Lincoln Memorial is humorously low detailed as it kind of has to be. There's also some decent variety in textures and level designs, and pig cops exploding from one bathroom into the other serves as a visual highlight. While it's not a terrible level, it's a shame that it took such a sharp drop from the first one, at least in my opinion. It's time for Season Scares in Dread October. The best way I can describe this map is attempting to be Derelict meets Golden Carnage, and you'll notice I said attempting. While it did technically come out long before Golden Carnage, Derelict has honestly done this concept better for the most part. Sure, there's more to do on the docks outside, but once you're inside, it's a very cramped submarine space. I'll give credit, it's only slightly larger than the outside submarine, and a lot is put into that space, but it's still kinda cramped. At least it can say it did the concept of torpedoes first before Golden Carnage, so it sort of has that going for it. It's only a shame that the theme of the map has to lead to such a tightly packed area. You can technically explore around a little bit though, which is a plus, and the initial outdoor area is very nicely designed. It's time to face the music and capital punishment. Fittingly, I feel the same way about this level as I do about our Congress, which is to say, kinda disappointed. That's not to say the map is terrible or anything, but sadly it has the misfortune of following up on such a great map. I will say that I do like the map's visuals, going from an urban outside to a very ravaged and alien-infested Capitol building. It's only a shame that the map is so aggressively linear, albeit with some nicely spacious areas here and there. Probably the most cryptic thing about it is having to blow up in a manhole. That kind of thing is usually optional, so it's easy to gloss over it. The dancing girl past the exit is kind of amusing at least, and not the first map to include her. Overall, the map is fine and serviceable, but a drastic step down from what came before it. It's time to finish off this DC trip in nuke-proof. Don't be fooled by the large-looking areas, it's very much a hand-holding affair, forcing you down the different areas in ascending numbers. It ends with a Cycloid Emperor, so no unique bosses here, but at least it's more involved than Stadium. Releasing in 1997, the president you have to save is Bill Clinton, which actually kind of fits with Duke's style for obvious reasons. The map's design is fine for the most part, a nice long bathroom mirror probably standing as a visual highlight. There's also a fast-moving elevator to two enforcers that serve as a nice gotcha trap. There are some nice things about this map, and you can definitely do a lot worse for a finale as seen in many one-room boss maps. You better keep this video to yourself, it's top secret. If the previous level was comparable to Rapid Transit, this is more like Area 51, and that's definitely not a bad thing. After the initial transition, it opens up into warehouse areas that are at least nicely spaced out. It also draws some inspiration from Time to Kill and Zero Hour by having a time machine that takes you to an ancient Egyptian pyramid. Now, one blemish of this map is that there's a point of no return via drop-down, but I still had a jetpack so I could circumvent it pretty easily. The bathrooms weirdly both have male signs, but I'm going to assume it's part of the top secret nature of the map since one has urinals and one doesn't. Admittedly, the map can be seen as slightly gimmicky, but at least it's gimmicky in a gimmickly fun way. Let's visit the Big Cheese's domain and hail to the chief. Yep, this is an episode about Washington, D.C., so what better opening than the White House, which is overrun by aliens? As someone who often criticizes maps for being too linear, I can appreciate having two different ways of entering. The building design of the White House is pretty appropriately spacious too, with some off rooms and a cool balcony. The Oval Office is of course to be expected, even if there isn't too much to it other than a hidden room with a keycard in it. It has just the right amount of difficulty and a gotcha trap with some explosive barrels you'd be wise to run from once you set off. Really, the level as a whole is a nice introduction to Duke It Out in DC and a very fitting location for Duke Nukem in general. It's not my favorite Duke 3D map ever, but it paints an overall positive picture for the add-on going forward. It's time to get glowing with nuked files. This one's actually another fairly good one, actually flipping the meme where you're the one opening up on the FBI. Open the FBI! It feels much more open than Memorial Service, having more branching rooms and a more complete vent system and paths in general. Add to it some nicely placed secrets and the sense of scope, and the level just feels nice and spacious, which you know I'm all over. It also has some nice detailing throughout, like a big hole in the ceiling with debris and a secret message spelling out Dio for some reason. It may not have the Oval Office or the Washington Monument with the reflecting pool, but it more than compensates by just being a very good map. It's time for some museum frights and Smithsonian terror. If you know how I feel about linear maps, you're going to know how biased this is going to be because I absolutely adore this one. It's positively sprawling with multiple different areas to explore in, and I even got lost for a hot minute. It's not a matter of quantity over quality either, because each exhibit has enough to be interesting, the shark tanks always being a thrill to jump into. Enforcers and pig cops keep the difficulty at a reasonable level, and honestly my only real regret with this map is that others can't be more like it. The sense of scale genuinely makes it feel like you're looking around in a massive museum too, and there's a good amount of secrets to find. In case I wasn't clear enough, this might just be the golden standard, if not for Duke 3D as a whole, then definitely Duke It Out in DC. It's time to have an overview from DC. Quality-wise, it ranges pretty far, but it never gets worse than the majority of Duke 3D's normal maps. There isn't really a map that I would call terrible or without its interesting elements. I have a bias against linear and cramped maps, but this isn't exactly Quake, even at its worst. The expansion overall makes some pretty decent use of DC, but some more references like the massive Thomas Jefferson building might have helped. It almost seemed like the designers ran out of ideas for locations, given one is a sewer map with a Pentagon tacked on and another one based on a spy novel by Tom Clancy. Still, while I felt it could have lived up to its potential a bit better, what's here is still pretty enjoyable. You can do a lot worse for Duke 3D, and I'd easily recommend it to anyone who liked the original Duke 3D.